The garage smelled like motor oil and broken dreams. I wiped my greasy hands on an old rag, listening to my daughter Amelia's voice drift through the thin walls. She was on the phone again, probably talking to one of her college friends about how embarrassing her old man was. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. "Oh my God, you should see him," she giggled. "He's out there fixing that piece of junk car again. Mom says he's having a midlife crisis, but honestly, I think he's just pathetic. If sarcasm burned calories, I'd be a marathon runner by now. 23 years of marriage, and this is what I get. A daughter who thinks I'm a joke, and a wife who apparently agrees with her. My name's Mick Sullivan, and I used to think I had it all figured out. Small-town tech consultant, decent house by the lake, wife climbing the corporate ladder at some fancy advertising agency. Sure, our lakeside city wasn't exactly booming. Half the downtown shops were boarded up, and the other half were hanging on by a thread. But we were doing okay, or so I thought. Dad's such a loser," Amelia continued, her voice getting louder. "Mom's just blowing off steam with her work friends. It's not like she's really cheating or anything. Well, not really." The wrench slipped from my hand and clattered to the concrete floor. Not really cheating? What the hell did that mean? I crept closer to the door connecting the garage to the house, my heart hammering against my ribs like it was trying to escape. Through the crack, I could see Amelia sprawled on the couch, her phone pressed to her ear. I mean, she comes home late sometimes and her lipstick's all smudged, but she says it's just work happy hours. Jake from her office gives her rides home when she's too tired to drive. Jake. I knew that name. Trust fund kid, maybe 28, with perfect teeth and a BMW that cost more than I made in 6 months. Marta had mentioned him a few times, always with this little smile that made my stomach twist. The front door opened, and speak of the devil, in walked my loving wife. Marta looked like she'd been through a wind tunnel. Her usually perfect blonde hair was messed up. Her red lipstick was smeared, and her blouse was wrinkled. "Hey, sweetie," she called to Amelia, completely ignoring me as I stepped out of the garage. "How was your day?" "Fine, Dad's been playing mechanic again." Amelia rolled her eyes. "Maybe you should buy him some actual tools for his birthday instead of those cheap ones from the hardware store." Marta glanced at me with that look, the one that said I was a minor inconvenience in her otherwise perfect life. "Another work happy hour?" I asked, trying to keep my voice casual. "You know how it is," she said, heading toward the stairs. "Big clients, important meetings. Someone has to keep this family afloat." The dig hit home, as it was meant to. Sure, my consulting business wasn't setting the world on fire, but I wasn't exactly sitting around eating bonbons either. I worked my ass off to keep us comfortable while she played corporate queen bee. "Jake give you a ride home again?" The question slipped out before I could stop it. Marta paused on the bottom step, her hand gripping the banister a little too tight. "He's just being nice. You know, looking out for a colleague." "Right, colleague." She disappeared upstairs and I heard the shower start running. Washing off the evidence, maybe? I shook my head, trying to push away the paranoid thoughts, but they stuck like tar, black and sticky, and impossible to ignore. Later that night, I was in my home office, a cluttered mess of computer parts and technical manuals, when I noticed the tablet we shared sitting on the desk. Marta had been using it earlier to check her work emails. The screen was still lit up, showing her text messages. I shouldn't have looked. I knew I shouldn't have looked. But when you're drowning in suspicion, you grab onto anything that might pull you up, or drag you down further. The message was right there at the top of the screen. "Can't wait for tonight, Wildcat. Meet at the lake house. Bring the good stuff. Jay." My hands started shaking. Wildcat? The good stuff? This wasn't colleague behavior. This was something else entirely. I grabbed my phone and opened the Find My app. Marta and I had shared locations for years, Just practical stuff like knowing when she'd be home from work or if she was stuck in traffic. Now I was using it for something much darker. Her little dot was blinking at a location I didn't recognize, a luxury mansion on the north side of the lake, where the rich folks lived in houses that looked like something out of a magazine. I sat there for maybe 10 minutes, staring at that dot, watching it stay perfectly still. She wasn't moving. She was there, at some stranger's house, doing God knows what with Jake and whoever else. The rage built up slowly, like pressure in a boiler. 23 years of marriage, 23 years of working my tail off, of supporting her dreams, of being the reliable guy who fixed things and paid bills and never asked for much in return. And this was my reward. I grabbed my jacket and keys. If she wanted to play games, fine. But I was done being the clueless husband. My beat-up sedan started on the third try, a small miracle. I drove through the empty streets of our dying city, past the closed factories and the bars where guys like me went to forget their troubles. The lake house was in a different world, where the streetlights actually worked and the lawns looked like golf courses. I parked about a block away and walked the rest of the distance, staying in the shadows. The mansion was lit up like a Christmas tree, and I could hear music and laughter drifting across the water. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, I could see them. Marta, my wife of 23 years, wrapped around Jake like a teenager at prom. Her hands were in his hair. His hands were, well, they weren't where a colleague's hands should be. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was seeing how happy she looked. Genuinely, radiantly happy in a way I hadn't seen in years. Maybe ever. I pulled out my phone and started taking pictures. The camera flash was off, but I got clear shots of them together, of the party scene inside, of Jake's BMW parked in the circular driveway like he owned the place. Then I had an idea. A beautifully petty, perfectly justified idea. I walked over to Jake's precious BMW and pulled out my pocket knife. 4 tires, 4 quick slashes. The air hissed out like the car was sighing in defeat. But I wasn't done. I found a piece of paper in my wallet, an old receipt, and wrote on the back, "Hope your night was worth the ride. A friend." I tucked it under his windshield wiper and stepped back to admire my work. It wasn't much, but it was a start. As I walked back toward my car, I heard a mechanical whirring sound. I looked up and saw a security camera mounted on a nearby tree, its red light blinking steadily. Had it caught me? Was I about to become the star of some rich person's security footage? I didn't stick around to find out. I jogged back to my car and drove home, my heart pounding and my mind racing with possibilities. The war had begun, and I'd just fired the first shot. The next morning, I woke up to the sound of Marta's phone buzzing nonstop. She was in the shower, so I could hear every angry ring echoing off the bathroom tiles. "Mick," she called. "Can you check my phone? It might be important." Important. Right. I picked up her phone and saw 17 missed calls from Jake, along with a string of text messages that would make a sailor blush. What the hell happened to my car? Someone slashed all 4 tires. There was a note. "Do you think Mick knows? We need to talk. Now." I deleted the messages and turned off her phone. "Nothing important," I called back. "Just some spam calls." When Marta came downstairs, she looked different, nervous, guilty. She kept checking her phone, frowning at the blank screen. "Battery must be dead," I said helpfully. "Want me to plug it in for you?" "No, that's okay." She grabbed it and headed for the kitchen. "I'll charge it at work." I followed her, watching as she moved around our kitchen like a stranger in her own home. Everything felt different now. The coffee maker, the breakfast table where we used to read the newspaper together, the family photos on the refrigerator. It all looked fake, like a movie set designed to look like a happy home. "So," I said, pouring myself coffee, "how was your evening? You came home pretty late." "Just work stuff." She wouldn't meet my eyes. "You know how these client dinners go." "Client dinner? I thought you said it was a happy hour." For just a second, she froze. Then she laughed. A high, artificial sound. Happy hour, dinner, it all blends together. You wouldn't understand. It's a corporate thing. A corporate thing. Like I was some kind of caveman who couldn't grasp the complexities of her sophisticated world. Right, I said. Well, I hope it was productive. She left for work without kissing me goodbye. We'd been married for 23 years, and she left without even looking back. I spent the morning in my office trying to focus on work, but my mind kept drifting. I needed to talk to someone, needed to get some perspective before I did something really stupid. Terry's gym was a 10-minute drive from my house, a converted warehouse that smelled like sweat and determination. Terry Kowalski had been my best friend since high school, back when we both thought we'd conquer the world. Now he ran a boxing gym for guys who needed somewhere to work out their frustrations. You look like hell, Terry said when I walked in. He was a big guy, maybe 6'4", with hands like sledgehammers and a heart bigger than the building. What's eating you? I told him everything. The text message, the surveillance, the tire slashing. He listened without interrupting, occasionally nodding or grunting in understanding. So what are you gonna do? He asked when I finished. I don't know. Part of me wants to pretend I never saw anything, just go back to being the oblivious husband. And the other part? The other part wants to burn their whole world down. Terry handed me a pair of boxing gloves. Let's work on that second part. But first, you need to hit something that isn't Jake's car. I spent an hour beating the hell out of a heavy bag, imagining Jake's pretty face with every punch. By the time I was done, my knuckles were raw, and my head was clearer. Here's the thing, Terry said as we sat on a bench, sharing a bottle of water. You want to win this thing? You gotta fight dirty. But you can't get caught. The moment you get caught, you lose everything. What do you mean? I mean you're the husband. In the court of public opinion, you're already guilty of something. Being boring, being neglectful, being not good enough. She's the victim until proven otherwise. So if you're gonna take her down, you gotta be smart about it. Smart. I could do smart. I'd been underestimated my whole life, by teachers, by bosses, by my own family. Maybe it was time to use that to my advantage. The opportunity came sooner than I expected. Amelia was having some kind of college showcase event, a presentation of her marketing projects to potential employers. Marta had been excited about it for weeks, talking about how it would be a great networking opportunity. The event was held at a fancy hotel downtown, the kind of place where the drinks cost more than most people made in a day. I put on my best suit, which wasn't saying much, and drove over, planning to play the supportive father role. I was standing by the bar, nursing a beer and watching Amelia schmooze with some corporate types when I saw them. Marta and Jake, walking in together like they owned the place. They weren't trying to hide it anymore. His hand was on the small of her back, and she was laughing at something he'd whispered in her ear. They were drunk, not falling down drunk, but loose and giggly in that way that screams, "We've been drinking for hours." They found a table near the front and settled in, completely ignoring me even though I was standing maybe 20 feet away. The rage hit me like a physical force. Here was my daughter's big night, her moment to shine, and my wife was treating it like a date with her boy toy. I walked over to their table, my beer in hand, and a smile plastered on my face. "Hey there," I said, loud enough for nearby tables to hear. "Fancy seeing you two here together. Again." Marta looked up, and for a second I saw panic flash across her face. "Mick, I didn't see you come in. I'll bet you didn't." I turned to Jake, who was trying to look innocent and failing miserably. "Jake, right? The colleague. Thanks for taking such good care of my wife, really going above and beyond the call of duty." "It's not what you think," Jake stammered, but his guilty expression said otherwise. "Oh, I think it's exactly what I think." I raised my beer bottle. "Here's to family values, to loyalty, to 23 years of marriage and the sanctity of commitment." The nearby tables had gone quiet. sensing drama. Marta grabbed my arm. Mick, please, not here. Why not here? This is Amelia's big night, right? Her moment to shine. Seems like the perfect time to celebrate family. I took a long drink of beer, then continued. You know, I was just thinking about how lucky I am. I mean, not every husband gets to watch his wife find such a dedicated colleague, someone who's willing to work so late into the night at such interesting locations. Jake started to stand up. Look, man, I think there's been a misunderstanding. Sit down, Junior. My voice came out harder than I'd intended. The grown-ups are talking. That's when Marta threw her drink at me. White wine, expensive stuff, right in my face. The liquid was cold and shocking, and for a moment, the whole room went silent. Then the yelling started. Marta screaming about how I was embarrassing her, Jake trying to play peacemaker, me laughing like a maniac because the whole situation was so absurd it had crossed over into comedy. You want to know what's embarrassing? I shouted, wiping wine off my face. 23 years of marriage down the drain because my wife decided to play house with some trust fund baby. Security showed up. 2 big guys in cheap suits who looked like they'd rather be anywhere else. I held up my hands in surrender. I'm leaving, I announced to the room. But before I go, let me just say this. Some people talk about family values, and other people live them. Figure out which one you want to be. I walked out, leaving behind a room full of shocked faces and whispered conversations. My phone was buzzing before I even got to the parking lot. 17 missed calls from Marta, 12 from Amelia. I turned off the phone and drove home. The war was escalating, and I was just getting started. But when I got home and checked social media, I realized I'd underestimated my opponent. Amelia had posted a TikTok video, shot at the event right after I'd left. In it, she was crying, talking about her toxic boomer dad, who had ruined her big night with his jealous delusions. The video had already gotten 3,000 views and hundreds of comments, most of them calling me everything from pathetic to abusive. My daughter had weaponized social media against me, and she was winning. I was sitting in my office, staring at the screen and feeling sorry for myself, when a new message popped up in my email. It was from an address I didn't recognize, with no subject line. You think you know everything? You ain't seen nothing yet. I stared at the message for a long time, trying to figure out who could have sent it. Marta? Jake? Someone else entirely? One thing was clear. This was bigger than just a cheating wife and her boy toy. Someone else was pulling the strings, and I was about to find out who. The anonymous email haunted me for 3 days. I kept checking my inbox, waiting for another message, but nothing came. Meanwhile, Marta had moved into the guest bedroom, temporarily, and Amelia was giving me the silent treatment. The house felt like a mausoleum. I threw myself into detective work, using skills I'd picked up during my tech consulting years. If someone wanted to play games, I'd show them what a motivated nerd could accomplish with too much time and not enough sleep. First, I hacked into our home Wi-Fi logs. It wasn't hard. I'd set up the system myself years ago, and I knew all the back doors. What I found made my blood run cold. Marta hadn't just been texting Jake. She'd been part of a group chat called After Hours Angels. 7 women from her advertising agency, all talking about their extracurricular activities in language that would make a porn star blush. The conversations went back months. Pool parties at luxury rentals, weekend trips to networking conferences that were really just orgies with expensive wine. My wife, the woman who wouldn't let me put my feet on the coffee table, was apparently the group's ringleader. But the real shock came when I saw who else was in the chat. Freya Hendricks, Marta's best friend since college. Sweet, innocent Freya, who came to our house for dinner parties and always complimented my cooking. Freya, who'd been maid of honor at our wedding. According to the chat logs, Freya wasn't just participating in these parties, she was organizing them, booking the venues, recruiting new members, even providing what they euphemistically called party supplies. I screenshotted everything, my hands shaking with rage and betrayal. 23 years of marriage, and I'd been living with a stranger. But I needed more than screenshots. I needed proof that would hold up in court, evidence that couldn't be dismissed as digital manipulation or misunderstanding. That's when I remembered Jake's address. He lived in a high-rise condo downtown, one of those glass towers that screamed, "New money." If I was going to confront anyone, it should be him, the weak link in their little conspiracy. I drove downtown on a Saturday morning when the streets were mostly empty and the chances of being recognized were minimal. Jake's building had a parking garage, and his precious BMW, now sporting 4 new tires, was parked in its assigned spot. I'd brought supplies this time. A baseball bat from Amelia's high school softball days, a can of spray paint left over from a home improvement project, and a small digital camera with a telephoto lens. The BMW looked even more expensive up close, all sleek lines and polished chrome. It seemed almost criminal to damage something so beautiful, but then I remembered the image of Jake's hands on my wife, and my conscience went quiet. I started with the hood, spray painting "Home Wrecker" in big red letters across the pristine surface. Then I moved to the sides, adding "Trust Fund Coward" and "Marriage Wrecker" in artistic flourishes. The baseball bat felt good in my hands, solid and purposeful. I started with the rearview mirrors, shattering them with precise swings, then the headlights, the taillights, the side windows. Each impact sent a jolt of satisfaction up my arms. I was so focused on my work that I almost didn't hear the elevator doors opening. Almost. Jake stepped out, probably coming down to move his car or grab something he'd forgotten. He saw me standing there with the baseball bat, saw his destroyed BMW, and his face went white as printer paper. "Jesus Christ," he whispered. "You're insane." Insane? I hefted the bat, testing its weight. "Nah, Jake. Insane would be what I do to you if you don't start talking." He backed toward the elevator, but I was faster. I stepped between him and the doors, and suddenly he was trapped in the parking garage with a very angry husband and a baseball bat. "Here's how this works," I said, my voice calm and reasonable. "You're going to tell me everything. The parties, the group chat, how long this has been going on. And if you lie to me, even once, I'm going to introduce your face to this bat. You can't threaten me," he stammered, but his voice was shaking. "I'm not threatening you, Jake. I'm making you a promise. Next time, I won't aim for the car." The words hung in the air like smoke. Jake looked at my face, looked at the destroyed BMW, and made his decision. "It started 6 months ago," he said. "Freya organized everything. She said it was about empowering women, about taking control of their desires. Marta was hesitant at first, but Freya convinced her." "Convinced her how?" "She said you were holding Marta back, that you were small town and small-minded, and Marta deserved better. She made it sound like some kind of feminist awakening." The pieces were starting to fit together, but I needed more. "What's Freya's angle? Why does she care so much about my marriage?" Jake looked confused. "I don't know, man. She just really hates you. Like really hates you. She talks about you all the time, about how you ruined her life somehow." Ruined her life? I barely knew Freya beyond the dinner parties and holiday gatherings. What could I have possibly done to... And then it hit me. 7 years ago, when I was doing consulting work for a marketing firm downtown, there'd been a plagiarism scandal. Someone stealing campaign ideas and presenting them as original work. I'd been brought in to trace the digital fingerprints, to figure out who was copying what. The trail had led to Freya Hendricks, junior account executive. She'd been stealing ideas from freelancers and smaller agencies, building her reputation on other people's creativity. When the evidence came out, she'd been fired, blacklisted, her career in ruins. I'd forgotten all about it. Just another consulting job, another problem solved. But apparently, Freya hadn't forgotten. "She's been planning this," I said, more to myself than to Jake. "The whole thing. She manipulated Marta, got her involved in these parties, knowing it would destroy our marriage." Jake nodded eagerly, probably hoping that cooperation would save him from another beating. "She's got photos, videos, all kinds of evidence. She says it's for protection, but I think she just likes having power over people." My phone buzzed. A text message from an unknown number, but I recognized the writing style from the anonymous email. "Check your messages, Mick. I think you'll find them illuminating." Attached was a photo that made my knees buckle. Marta in bed, naked and laughing, with Jake on one side and Freya on the other. The image was crystal clear, professionally lit, obviously staged. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was the timestamp. It was from last night, while I'd been sitting at home feeling sorry for myself. I looked up at Jake, who was staring at his phone with the same sick expression I probably had on my face. "She sent it to you too?" he asked. I nodded, unable to speak. Freya wasn't just destroying my marriage, she was documenting it, creating a record of my humiliation for posterity. "Listen," Jake said, his voice desperate. "I know you hate me, and you have every right to. But Freya's crazy, like genuinely unhinged. She's not going to stop until she's destroyed everything you care about." "Then I guess I better destroy her first." I walked away, leaving Jake standing next to his ruined car in the empty parking garage. The war had escalated again, and now I knew who my real enemy was. But as I drove home, planning my next move, I couldn't shake the feeling that Freya was still 3 steps ahead of me. She'd been planning this for 7 years, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. The question was, what else did she have planned? And how far was I willing to go to stop her? I spent the next week planning like a general preparing for battle. Freya wanted to play puppet master? Fine. But every puppeteer has strings of their own, and I was about to start pulling them. The plan was elegant in its simplicity. I called Marta on Thursday afternoon, putting on my most contrite voice. "I've been thinking," I said, "about us, about everything that's happened. I was wrong to embarrass you at Amelia's event. I was wrong to let my jealousy get the better of me." There was silence on the other end then. "What are you saying, Mick?" "I'm saying maybe we should talk. All of us. You, me, Jake, even Freya, since she's been such a good friend through all this. Let's go to the lake cabin this weekend. Hash everything out like adults." The lake cabin had been in my family for 3 generations. A rustic place on the quiet side of the lake, far from the luxury mansions and party houses. It was where Marta and I had spent our honeymoon, where we'd brought Amelia as a baby, where we'd made some of our happiest memories. It seemed fitting that it would be where everything ended. "I don't know," Marta said. "It might be too painful going back there. Please, just 1 weekend. If we can't work things out, then at least we'll know we tried." She agreed, probably thinking it would be her chance to ask for a divorce without looking like the bad guy. Jake and Freya were harder sells, but eventually I convinced them that a face-to-face conversation would be better than letting lawyers handle everything. I spent Friday setting up my equipment. Hidden cameras in every room, audio recorders disguised as decorative objects, motion sensors that would alert my phone if anyone tried to leave unexpectedly. If Freya wanted documentation, I'd give her more than she bargained for. But the real surprise was the live stream setup. I'd connected everything to a private server, with feeds going directly to social media accounts I'd created for this specific purpose. When the time came, everyone in their social circle would get a front-row seat to the show. They arrived Saturday afternoon in Jake's replacement car, a flashy red Mustang that screamed, "compensation vehicle." Marta looked nervous, Jake looked scared, and Freya looked like the cat who'd swallowed the canary. "This is nice," Freya said, surveying the cabin's rustic interior. "Very authentic." The word dripped with condescension. Everything about Freya was calculated. Her clothes, her makeup, her carefully modulated voice. She'd reinvented herself since the plagiarism scandal, but underneath the polish, she was still the same vindictive woman who'd stolen other people's work. We sat around the old wooden table where Marta and I used to play cards on rainy weekends. The irony wasn't lost on me. We were about to play the highest stakes game of our lives. "So," I said, pouring drinks for everyone. Let's talk about honesty. Mick, Marta started, but I held up a hand. No, let me finish. I've been doing some thinking, and I realize I haven't been completely honest with myself, or with any of you. I pulled out my phone and set it on the table. For instance, I haven't been honest about what I know, about the parties, the group chats, the little photography sessions you've been having. The temperature in the room dropped about 20 degrees. Jake went pale, Marta's hand flew to her mouth, and Freya's smile never wavered. I don't know what you're talking about, Freya said smoothly. Sure you do. I swiped through the screenshots on my phone. After Hours Angels. Cute name, very creative. Though I guess creativity was never your strong suit, was it, Freya? Now her smile faltered. What's that supposed to mean? Oh, come on. We both know what it means. 7 years ago, downtown marketing firm, plagiarism scandal. Ring any bells? The silence stretched like a rubber band about to snap. Marta looked confused. Jake looked terrified. And Freya looked like she wanted to murder me with her bare hands. You destroyed my career, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. You destroyed your own career. I just followed the digital breadcrumbs you left behind. I was young. I made mistakes. But you didn't have to ruin everything. And you didn't have to spend 7 years plotting revenge against my marriage. But here we are. That's when things got physical. Freya lunged across the table, her manicured nails aimed at my face. I caught her wrists, and suddenly everyone was yelling at once. Jake tried to play peacekeeper, grabbing Freya around the waist. Marta was screaming at all of us to stop. I shoved Freya back into her chair and grabbed Marta's phone off the table. Let's see what other secrets we can share, I said, scrolling through her messages. Oh, look at this. Text from last Tuesday. Can't wait to see the look on Mick's face when he finds out about the bank account. What bank account, honey? Marta's face went white. Mick, I can explain. The joint account you've been draining for 6 months? The one you've been using to fund your little adventures? Yeah, I found that too. I held up my phone, showing the bank statements I'd downloaded. $43,000, gone. Spent on hotel rooms, party supplies, and God knows what else. The room exploded again. This time, it was Jake who lost his temper, shouting about how he'd never signed up for this level of crazy. Freya was yelling at him to shut up, Marta was crying, and I was laughing because the whole situation was so perfectly, catastrophically insane. You want to know the best part? I shouted over the chaos. All of this is being live-streamed to your friends, your co-workers, your families. Say hi to the camera, everybody. I pointed to the hidden cameras, and for a moment, everyone froze. Then Jake made a run for it. He bolted for the door, probably planning to jump in his Mustang and speed away from the mess he'd helped create, but when he got outside, the car wouldn't start. I disconnected the battery and poured a bag of sugar into the gas tank while they were inside arguing. The engine turned over once, twice, then died with a pathetic wheeze. Going somewhere, Jake? I called from the porch. He spun around, panic written all over his face. You're insane. This is kidnapping. This is a conversation. You're free to leave anytime you want. Of course, it's about 15 miles to the main road, and I wouldn't recommend walking it in those fancy shoes. In the distance, I could hear sirens. Someone, probably a neighbor who'd heard the shouting, had called the police. Looks like the cavalry's coming, I said. Good thing I've got an airtight alibi. I pulled out my phone and called Terry. Hey, buddy. Yeah, I'm still at your gym. Been here all afternoon working on my form. You can vouch for that, right? Terry, bless him, played along perfectly. Absolutely. You've been here since noon. A lot of people saw you. The police arrived just as Freya was trying to smash one of my cameras with a poker from the fireplace. They found 4 adults in various states of emotional breakdown, a trashed cabin, and enough evidence of adultery and financial fraud to keep the lawyers busy for months. I walked out of there without a scratch, leaving the others to explain themselves to the nice officers. My alibi was solid, My evidence was documented, and my revenge was just getting started. But as I drove away, I couldn't shake the feeling that the best was yet to come. The annual Lakeside Community Block Party was 3 weeks away, and I spent every day preparing for what would be my final performance. If Freya wanted to destroy my life in public, I'd return the favor with interest. The block party was a big deal in our little city, the one event that brought together everyone from the blue-collar families to the Lakeside Mansion crowd. Local politicians gave speeches, businesses set up booths, and there was always a stage for community announcements and entertainment. This year, I was going to be the main event. I spent the weeks after the cabin confrontation gathering intelligence like a private investigator. The live stream from our family meeting had gone viral in our social circle, but that was just the opening act. I had bigger plans. Freya's plagiarism scandal from 7 years ago was just the tip of the iceberg. Once I started digging into her past, I found a pattern of deception that went back to college. Fake transcripts, stolen research, even a scholarship she'd obtained using someone else's essay. Jake's trust fund turned out to be mostly imaginary. His family had money, but he'd been cut off 2 years ago for gambling debts. He'd been living on credit cards and borrowed time, using his relationship with Marta to maintain his lifestyle. And Marta, my sweet, ambitious wife, had been embezzling from her own company for months, skimming money from client accounts to fund her new lifestyle. The bank account she'd drained wasn't just ours. It was a complex web of financial fraud that would probably land her in federal prison. I compiled everything into a multimedia presentation that would have made Hollywood proud. Videos, photos, bank records, chat logs, audio recordings, a complete documentary of betrayal and corruption. The day of the block party was perfect. Sunny skies, light breeze, the whole community turning out for food trucks and live music. I arrived early, dressed in my best suit and carrying a laptop bag that contained enough evidence to destroy 3 lives. The stage was set up in the center of the park, with a professional sound system and a large screen for presentations. I'd volunteered to help with the technical setup, which gave me access to all the equipment. Marta, Jake, and Freya arrived together around noon, probably thinking they could brazen their way through the community event. They'd weathered the immediate storm after the cabin incident. Jake had hired a lawyer, Freya was claiming harassment, and Marta was playing the victim of an abusive marriage. But they hadn't counted on me having one last card to play. The speeches started at 2 o'clock. The mayor talked about community values, the police chief discussed neighborhood watch programs, and several local business owners promoted their services. Then it was my turn. "Ladies and gentlemen," I said, stepping up to the microphone. "My name is Mick Sullivan, and I've lived in this community for over 20 years. I've always believed in the values that make our town special: honesty, loyalty, and taking care of each other." I could see Marta in the crowd, her face already showing concern. Jake was trying to look casual, but his body language screamed guilty conscience. Freya was watching me with the intensity of a snake preparing to strike. But recently, I've learned that not everyone shares those values. Some people see our community as a playground for their own selfish desires. Some people think they can lie, cheat, and steal without consequences. The crowd was getting interested now. Nothing draws attention like the promise of scandal. So today, I want to share a story with you. A story about betrayal, corruption, and the price of deception. I clicked a button on my laptop, and the big screen came alive with images. Photos from the luxury mansion parties, screenshots of the after-hours angels chat, bank records showing the embezzled funds. The crowd gasped. Someone screamed. I heard Marta shouting, "Stop!" But the microphone was mine, and I wasn't finished. "This is my wife of 23 years, I said, pointing to a particularly damaging photo. "This is her colleague, Jake Morrison, whose family trust fund is about as real as his moral compass. And this is Freya Hendricks, the mastermind who orchestrated this whole thing as revenge for a 7-year-old grudge." The presentation continued for 10 minutes, each slide more devastating than the last. I showed the plagiarism evidence, the financial fraud, the web of lies that had been spinning for months. By the time I finished, half the crowd was staring in shock, and the other half was taking pictures with their phones. Social media was about to explode. The truth has a way of coming out, I concluded. And today everyone gets to see what happens when you mistake kindness for weakness. That's when Jake snapped. He rushed the stage, probably thinking he could tackle me or grab the laptop. But I'd been expecting this. I'd been training with Terry for weeks, preparing for exactly this moment. Jake swung wild, his fist aimed at my head. I ducked, and he stumbled past me, crashing face first into the dessert table that had been set up behind the stage. Cake and frosting exploded everywhere, and Jake went down in a heap of sugar and humiliation. The crowd roared with laughter and shock. Someone was filming everything, probably already uploading it to YouTube. Freya tried to salvage the situation, grabbing the microphone and shouting about harassment and lies. But I'd prepared for that too. "Ladies and gentlemen," I said, taking back the microphone, "let me introduce you to Freya Hendricks, who was fired from Morrison Marketing 7 years ago for plagiarism. Would you like to see the evidence?" More slides, more documentation, more proof of her pattern of deception. The crowd turned on her like a pack of wolves, booing and shouting for her to leave. But I wasn't done yet. I walked over to Jake, who was still picking cake out of his hair, and handed him a set of car keys. "These are for your Mustang," I said loud enough for everyone to hear. "I fixed the engine problems you were having. Unfortunately, I couldn't fix the fact that it's sitting at the bottom of Miller's Pond." The crowd erupted in laughter and applause. Jake stared at the keys like they were coated in poison. Then I turned to Marta, my wife of 23 years, the mother of my child, the woman I'd loved more than my own life. "And for you, sweetheart," I said, pulling out a manila envelope. "Divorce papers and bank statements showing that our joint accounts have been transferred to a legal trust. You're officially broke, alone, and unemployed. Congratulations on your liberation." The envelope hit her feet like a bomb. She stared at it, then at me, then at the crowd of neighbors and friends who were witnessing her complete destruction. "You bastard," she whispered, but the microphone picked it up and broadcast it to the entire gathering. "No," I said, smiling for the first time in months. "I'm the guy who figured out how to win." The crowd was in chaos now. People laughing, shouting, taking pictures, calling friends to tell them what they'd just witnessed. Jake was still covered in cake, Freya was being escorted away by security, and Marta was standing in the wreckage of her old life. I walked off the stage, sweaty and bruised, but completely triumphant. Behind me, the community continued to buzz with excitement and scandal. They'd wanted a villain in their little drama. I'd given them the headline act, complete with special effects and a standing ovation. The curtain was down, the audience was satisfied, and I was still standing. They'd underestimated the quiet guy who fixed things and paid bills and never asked for much in return. But everyone has a breaking point, and mine had been a long time coming. Now they knew what happened when you pushed too far. Now they knew the price of betrayal. And as I walked away from the chaos I'd created, leaving my enemies to face the consequences of their choices, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years. Complete and total satisfaction. The war was over, and I had won.